It looks like rain.
Today, we're diving into 1998's Ever After to see if Drew's iconic take on Cinderella still brings that high-energy fun, or if this realistic tale has lost its sparkle.
Also stands out as the only time she's ever really taken on something quite like this.
Plus, will Seth stump us on this week's trivia question? Or will we show we know Drew Barrymore's filmography better than anyone?
True or false, did he almost pass out while filming a scene in this movie?
Finally, we'll answer the most important question: how are we going to rate it? Are you going to take it home? Are you going to watch it at Grandma's? Or are you going to hide it in the attic? So grab your glass slippers and just breathe. It's time to watch another movie at Grandma's. Hello, hello, please come in. There's some fresh cookies in the cookie jar. There's a pitcher of Kool-Aid on the counter. Have a seat and make yourself comfortable. Welcome to Movies at Grandma's House, where we love to revisit the movies from our childhood to answer the question, does it still hold up? And is it family-friendly enough that even Grandma can enjoy? And I'm your host, Isaac. First, I'm arrogant, and now I have no pride. However, do I manage that?
And I'm Seth. Milady, you may have anything you can carry.
And I'm Scott, coming by for a visit and just trying to remember to just breathe.
Very, very nice. Yes, we have a special guest, a visitor to Grandma's house. It is Scott Patterson. A big round of applause being a guest for us. How are you doing, Scott?
I'm always good, or let's try to be. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad we'll chat. We just recorded with you coming by my podcast, and now I'm sitting here at Grandma's house wondering, hoping I don't see any of those little weird strawberry candies in the middle of the night.
That's just those core memories, right? Seeing that kind of stuff. So at least it does for me. But it's fantastic to have you with us. We're so excited to be covering a movie I think we're going to be talking about a little bit more. Like you mentioned, I was able to be on your show. But Seth, just to remind everyone at home, what is Grandma putting on for us to watch today?
Ever After.
All right. So if you've never seen this film, this is fair warning. We're going to be talking about it. So if you don't want this spoiled, consider yourself warned. Well, before we jump into this more, let's get a little bit more backstory about this movie and some film facts. So Ever After, a Cinderella Story was released back on July 31st, 1998. It had a budget of $25 to $26 million. Didn't give an exact, but that was the numbers it gave. Box office, $98 million. Looking around at some reviews, IMDb has a 7.1 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes is a 91%. Letterboxd, 3.7 out of 5. Currently, as of this recording, you can watch it for free on Disney Plus and Tubi. It stars Drew Barrymore, Dougray Scott, Angelica Houston, Megan Dodds, and many more. It's in association with 20th Century Fox. And last but not least, we have to hear, how does Grandma feel about this one?
Granny's family-friendly rating for Ever After is a B- for brief, strong language and adult themes.
Yeah, this is actually a first for us on the podcast. The first PG-13 rating, but Grandma's pretty good with this one. This is actually a milder rated PG-13. I'm sure we're going to talk about it. Has the language and things like Seth mentioned, but actually pretty family-friendly for the most part. Well, if you have your memories also, make sure you leave them down below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and ratings, but we got to hear from our special guest, our visitor today, Scott. So we'll start with, what are your first memories of Ever After?
Well, my first memories of Ever After, of course, I've always had an affinity for Drew, and this came around at a time where she was full comeback, mode. She was everywhere all the time, and I was loving every minute of that. But this was such a departure from pretty much anything else she was doing at the time. And so that, that was my initial reaction, was like, oh, cool. She's taking on a new challenge here. And of course, it's a classic story that everybody at least knows the gist of. So that is interesting to me as well. So I was instantly intrigued.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what a lot of people were saying. It's that phase of her career. It's a little bit different, actually. But how about you, Seth?
So I had seen this several times when it was newer, but it had been a long time since between then and now. So it was kind of almost fresh, coming back to watch it, believe it or not.
Yeah, I know what that's like. I kind of was the same when this first came out. I don't think I was in the theater when I saw it. It feels like I might have, but it's been so many years ago. Again, we're talking almost 30 years ago. It's crazy. But I have more memories of Friend's house. That's probably the last time I remember seeing this. And I remember enjoying it. I thought, yeah, this is a different take on the whole Cinderella. You know, you have your Disney princess kind of more of a damsel in distress. I'm sure we'll talk about it more when we get into it, but that was what I always thought. Like, she's not just useless. She's actually doing stuff. And that helps, obviously, having Drew Barrymore, just her charm and her acting and everything. It really added to it, I thought. But with that said, I mentioned 30 years ago. It's kind of crazy to think about. Come back to you, Scott. What was your expectations coming back on revisiting this one?
Well, I mean, out of all the Drew movies that I've watched many, many times, and that's a long list, I can't say this is one that I revisited over and over and over as many as some. I mean, I've watched it enough, and it's one of those things where back before streaming, where if I'm flipping around cable and, oh, hey, that's on, I'd put it on, I'd watch it here, watch it there, doing other things. So, I mean, it wasn't completely fresh in mind, but that was probably a good thing, because, if it had been on, there's a number of Drew movies it could have been that I could probably put on mute and just recite to you. So, as far as, kind of thinking about this objectively for this episode, maybe watching one that I don't have completely committed to memory like that was a strength. And I had a good time.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear. How about you, Seth?
So I was really just hoping to enjoy this one because it had been so long, and I remember I'll talk about it later, but I loved it so much when it came out.
Yeah. I almost think of like E.T. and this when I think of Drew Barrymore and a few others, but there's reasons for that as well. We'll get into it. But I was just thinking to myself, I hope it holds up. Sometimes those movies, again, you remember the actors like Drew Barrymore or others about it, but they show their age. And that's what this podcast is about, coming back to it, because in your mind's eye, you thought one thing and come back to it. So I was like, I just hope this is a good time that I can kind of recapture that memories. Late 90s, man, that was such a fun time in my life too. So I was like, this might give me some of those vibes. I was just hoping for that. Well, before we get to Plot Rewind, let's pause just a moment to hear from our sponsors. Hey, love movies as much as we do? Then bring the experience of the theater to your walls with movieposters.com. Whether you're into the classics, the blockbusters, or indie gems, they have something for every single film fanatic. As a listener of our podcast, you can save up to 15% on your order right now. Just use code Grandma's House at checkout. Head to movieposters.com and let's build your ultimate collection today. Okay, let's take the VHS out of the cover. Let's put it in the VCR and press play.
In this retelling of the Cinderella story, we find Danielle wanting a better life, searching for love, and she may have found it in Prince Henry. In opposition of her stepmother and stepsisters, she does everything she can to make them happy. With a little help from Vinci, maybe it'll be happily ever after. Find out as Grandma puts on one of her favorites.
Very nice. Yeah, this is, again, we talked about a little bit. This is a different take on the Cinderella story. It's, I've heard the Drew story of Cinderella. So that's obviously the impressions I get is like, this is just neat. It's a timepiece. It gives you like this vibe of it's going to be a drama, but it also is fun. I don't know how to describe that because there's some jokes throughout and the quotes. If you're paying attention, you might get a good chuckle out of. But let's start with you, Scott. Like, again, you're a big Drew Barrymore fan. That's no secret. But what's your first impressions as you're watching the film?
Well, one of the first things back then and now, rewatching it, that stands out to me is, everyone knows, the Cinderella story, but yeah, different takes on it. Have Cinderella, I guess, in different states. In this case, Danielle, she's strong from the get-go. She's very strong person in every aspect you can be. She's a strong person in a bad situation, a challenging situation, just doing the best that she can. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why this movie works, because first of all, the I guess you could say more storybook version, kids, picture book version of Cinderella. That probably wouldn't have worked in this setting anyway, but it certainly wouldn't have been fitting for someone, this character being played by Drew, if she was just sort of a pushover at the start, and that later came up from the get-go. Danielle is just a very strong and powerful person. It just doesn't know quite how to handle the situation she's found herself in.
Yeah.
Through no fault of her own.
Yeah. That's what establishes it right out the gate, too. Like, she's covered in mud. I mean, it's her younger self, but, she's not your typical female lead. She's kind of this tomboyish, and that's a big influence from her father. I appreciate that too goes into her backstory. It's not just she's this pretty girl and look, she's going to marry her Prince Charming. It's like, no, actually, the Prince Charming came to her, so to say. I like that aspect of it. But yeah, get some thoughts from you, Seth. What's kind of your first impressions?
I felt very similar to what you guys are saying, the female empowerment of the character. She was, speaking for herself in a setting that normally you wouldn't see that in. I thought she was just commanded the stage and was able to just be a great example for young women. And I also thought, like, when I remembered this as a grand film, when I looking back on years ago, and the storytelling was very nice. I'm a big cinematography guy, so I like the use of the faraway shots they did, getting a scope of the surroundings. I liked how the narrator didn't overtake the film, but left room for the wonderful dialogue, the witty dialogue that was just wonderful, made this movie shine.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just something about how it's shot. I go back to it's a drama. It's a more mature tone with the Cinderella, but it's not so mature. It's not dark. Yeah. It's not depressing. It's just more real life. It's not this fairy tale that we're used to. And like you're saying, I agree. I love some of the shots where I was just kind of like, that's really well done. It's telling the story in a different light. The story definitely has its nods to that fairy tale story, but this kind of feels like its own movie, really. It's not just we're adapting a story and calling it a day. What think of the story, Scott? Overall, they kind of have those nods, but it's its own thing. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think that it definitely walked that line, and like as well as it possibly could have. Because it isn't the shiny, neat, fairy tale, very overly simplistic and idealistic, so to speak. But it wasn't, too dark. As let's say someone had tried to take on a film like this now, they'd probably go quite dark. That seems to be the nature of television and film these days, to where, they've even, there's even been people that have to make, Superman dark and gritty and grumpy. And, I mean, God, let's hope they don't do another Mr. Rogers biopic or something, right? It just, it wouldn't go the wrong way. But I think they walked that line perfectly of making this, a little more realistic, maybe slightly gritty here and there, kind of maybe stressful here and there, but not to an alarming degree. And I think that's part of what made it work as well, because this is something that kids could latch onto without being scared away by too much or overly anxious about too much. But adults aren't going to feel like they're watching a kid's movie either. There's a, it's enough for them as well to kind of give them a little bit of a taste of, I guess you could say, a more grown up fairy tale.
I agree. Yeah, this is one that, again, it's a PG-13 rated, and it doesn't mean that that's always going to not be for kids, but it's just, okay, well, what's the concern? And when you do the research, I mean, like you're saying, it does kind of appeal, as much as it's a more mature story, it still can appeal to kids. And I like that about it. Because in my mind, I'm thinking this is going to be really serious. It's going to be more of this dramatics. But I kept finding myself like a lot of scenes ended on a joke. There's a lot of quotes. I'm sure we'll get into them. Feel free to bring them out. But I'm thinking of one where it was the stepsister. She wanted to, the premise is she's trying to get the affections of the prince. And that is getting back to Danielle and the one servant girl. And the servant girl says, The only throne I want her to sit on is the one I clean every day. Like, that was how they end the scene. They don't make it all serious and, like you said, dark like you would see today, like a lot of stuff. So it was kind of refreshing for me. That kind of took me back. Like, that's how movies used to be. They'd have a good balance and it works. I don't know what else to say. But what about you, Seth? What'd you think of the story aspect?
I'm just going to echo you guys the whole time. So, so I thought there was a very simple plot. Although it's simple, it was so refreshing, especially given what we have to work with Cinderella. There's two extremes. There's the very, upbeat fairy tale, and there's the very dark Cinderella that no one does copies of because it's too dark. And this was right in the middle, and it had moments of it both, but it was really well done, really well told. But I loved the character arcs of each of these characters, and it was just amazing to see how they kept growing throughout the film. Even I mean, to the end of the very film, all the characters were growing, and it was amazing.
Yeah. I think what was big is that, the story of Cinderella is she goes to this ball, she loses her glass shoe, and the prince is able to identify her because the shoe fits. They give that nod, but no, throughout the film, they're running into each other. So there's actually that, like you said, Seth, character arcs. It's amazing. It's like, wow, this actually works, that romance or, them ending up together at the end, it feels earned. It's not just some guy like meeting a stranger and I found you cute. I got your shoe and we're going to now get married. It was actually earned, and he was being forced to marry others and he turned them down. So it felt refreshing. It was kind of like a good payoff for that kind of movie that it's telling. But we got to circle back. You were talking about character arcs there, Seth. So let's go back to Scott. We got to hear it. What did you think of the characters? And I'm sure you're going to be touching on Drew Barrymore as Cinderella.
Well, here's the thing that gets me about Danielle, the way it was portrayed. Okay. She's running into Henry quite a few times. Pure happenstance. But she really wasn't pretending. Like, she wasn't putting on a show for him in so many ways. I mean, she was not being straight up about her station in life, obviously, but she still had such a strength and a class and an intelligence to herself that she really wasn't pretending. That's really who she was. But the only person in the world that was seeing her that way was Henry. Nobody else even wanted to look at her. And so therefore nobody else knew that side of her. And so, therefore she was actually being more honest with him in every way, except obviously her title or what have you, her station in life, or at that point in time, she was being more honest with him than probably anybody else in the story. And I think it's subtle, though, the way they do that. You really have to kind of think about it to really kind of catch it that way.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I want to spin it over to Seth to get your thoughts. I have more to add to that, but I'm curious to hear.
I'm echoing again, so I apologize. But so Danielle, played by Drew Barrymore, was a wonderfully witty and intelligent character who really stole the show. I mean, like, it's not like the whole movie revolved around her, but yet it kind of did and it kind of didn't. And she stole the scenes that she was in. So that was really great. I felt like Vinci, played by Patrick Godfrey, was also a scene stealer.
Yeah.
I wish he was in more of the movie. Personally, I loved his scenes. They were very captivating.
Yes. He was great.
And he added a nice piece of levity you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
We'll call back to what you said earlier about how you have some scenes that could be kind of dark or stressful, and then he could add something. I love it. You're getting Danielle out from behind, where she got locked in during the ball. And, you're a genius. Like, oh, I'll go down as history as the man who opened the door. And now it lightened the whole mood up a bit.
Yes.
Right. Where it would have seemed sort of like a more distressful scene, I think, without that line and his delivery of that line. I should have led that quote at the start of this podcast. Now that I think about it, because that line, it has always made me laugh out loud.
Yeah.
Even though I know it's coming, that was just so epically done.
Yeah.
Yes.
I loved it too. Cause it's also, like you're saying, they're all serious. Like, that was genius. And he's just kind of like, Yeah, whatever. But it's just the delivery. I agree. It's so well done. I love the part where she's swimming in like the pond and lake and he's walking on the water. And that's something about Drew Barrymore also. She does such a great, terrified like scream. And that starts with E.T., I know. But look at her catalog of films. She does this like scream where she's actually terrified. And I laugh every time. So that scene where, he's walking and she's swimming and he's just like, it looks like it's going to be raining. And she just does that scream right there. I mean, they have great chemistry too. I have to say, like they just did a great job on the casting, the characters. And the prince even, I've kind of felt for, as much as he was complaining about his lot in life, that traditional royalty, while people are starving to death in the streets, like, oh, woe is me. I still liked his character because you could tell he wanted to do what was right, even if he didn't know what that was at the beginning. It wasn't until that character arc of growing. And Cinderella was kind of, or Danielle, she's kind of that driving force of it. So
he was oblivious, but he wasn't oblivious because of ignorance or stupidity. He was oblivious because from his station in life and what he is exposed to, he never thought about these things this way. He hadn't seen it. He hadn't been part of it. She made him aware, made him think about these things, which is why it worked.
Yeah, I agree. And right off the bat, she throws that like apple at him at the head. It was like, no, this is the tone setting. Like, I love that. It was like, he's just out riding and it kind of takes him aback a little bit. Like, who is this servant at the time? It's what he sees. But you have to talk about Cinderella with the stepmother, the stepsisters. So maybe come back to you, Seth. What did you think of those characters? Because they're kind of the famous part of it, but it was still kind of a slight tweak to the characters.
Yeah, what I appreciated, and I think I have a note of this somewhere. What I appreciated was the stepsister that was, it's actually, I think, a fun fact. One of the stepsisters is more empathetic than the other towards Danielle's situation.
Yeah.
And I liked that because that's not a side that they usually tell with this storyline. And I really appreciated it because it made it more like human. Whereas if like both the stepsisters were just completely evil, it would just be, a little bit too much or something. But I thought Angelica Houston did an amazing job. I'm a big fan of hers. Portraying such a rotten person. I did some research and she said she had loved doing it because it was so different than what she's usually doing. And it was like a whole other experience for her acting.
Yeah.
And they just played it so well. It was so believable too. And that'd be a hard role to have because it's like almost the crux of the film almost. And they just pulled it off.
Yeah, I agree. It was refreshing, actually, because like you said, the Disney version, the stepsisters are just pretty much identical. They're just mean.
Yeah.
And the stepmother in that is well done. But I agree. Angelica Houston, she just, I don't know, she's able to pull it off, even though maybe that's not what she normally would do up to that point. What did you think of those characters, Scott?
Well, yeah, Angelica, she absolutely hit it out of the park. She absolutely did. And I like how she, on occasion, maybe feigned like she was maybe having a little sympathy or a little love, and then would just immediately claw it away. And you're like, okay, this is not a good person. But I do love the take with the stepsisters as well, because if they'd both been that way, it kind of becomes superfluous, right? You don't really need two if they're the same character. Yeah. So making one empathetic worked, especially since she was played by the criminally underrated Melanie Linsky. She is phenomenally talented, and she comes off as a very sweet person. And I don't know why I don't see her in more things. Yeah. And I think this is a great example of why, because she, they were going to have the empathetic stepsister as well, who, of course, she's conflicted and she's got her own, situation and this kind of juxtaposition I have to try to navigate as well. But you couldn't have cast probably somebody better to play that than her at the time.
Yeah. I agree. Great casting overall. We can't rave enough about it, and that adds to the drama, what they're trying to go for. I think with I think her name, I I forget her. That's terrible. But the one was Marguerite. I think that's the one that was more on the mother's side, because the stepmother, like you're saying, she seems nice at first. And I actually felt sympathy for her because she married Danielle's father and he dies at the beginning. That's kind of the tragic backstory. And ever since then, you can tell it's kind of affected her. There's that one scene, it's kind of midway through, where she says, every time I look at you, you remind me of your father. And it's kind of like, oh, yeah, I kind of get why she treats her so bad. But then she goes right back to it. Like you said, Scott, it's just like, oh, she plays that character where she gets you, she might catch you a little bit there. But they do some pretty terrible things. There's that book that is from her father, ends up getting burned. I kind of cringed a little bit. I was like, oh, yeah. And then they're wanting to wear her dress that was her mother's. And I think that's woman code of like, you do not wear another woman's dress unless they give you permission. Like, do not touch the dress. Factor in it was her mother's. It's like, I'm a dude and I'm still like, oh, this is wrong. Like, she just, Drew Barrymore, come on, she's so charming. She just socks her. And it's just so satisfying. I hate to say that. Like, it was just so satisfying. What'd you think of that, Scott, when she got clocked pretty good?
Well, yeah. I think that was such an important scene because, again, Danielle clearly isn't being treated well. And she's clearly strong enough to sort of shrug it off a little bit. She doesn't like it. She doesn't want to rock the boat either. And then, yeah, that's just going too far. And so, yeah, perfectly played because it's like, now she's standing up for herself. She's always been that strong, but now it's like, this is going too far. And yeah, just absolutely, she was justified. Cause yeah, it's like, these are things that are deeply meaningful to her and they didn't care. And, I think everybody in some way or another might know that kind of hurt a little bit. Everybody's had things in their lives, whether, it be, there's no reason to go into it, but, everybody I think knows how that can feel for whatever reasons. And I think they managed to successfully tap that vein. And I think that's why that scene works so well. And you're like, yeah, you go get her. Okay, go whoop her butt. She had this coming for a while.
Yes, it built it up. It was like, that's where I really think Drew also shines. She's charming. She's, her own self, that kind of tomboyish, but then she just turns it on. Like, that's a great acting scene I would point to of Drew Barrymore because she just has that passion where she's screaming and you're kind of like, yeah, that's good reason. Like, she's warranted that, like you said, of like, yeah, you don't mess with people's stuff like that. What'd you think of just, I guess, the cruelty there, Seth? Like, get your thoughts.
Well, the more you guys talk about it, the more I'm thinking about the scene where I feel like it's the most vulnerable scene of the film, where she shows her honest side to her stepmother and says, is there like the faintest feeling of love there? And she just shuts it down.
Yeah.
And it's like, as a grown man, I felt crushed watching that scene. Well, I'm tearing up just thinking about it. It's unbelievable.
Well, and it kind of makes you think that maybe the reason like Danielle's put up with as much as she has up to that point might be because deep down inside she's hopeful that love is there, but it's never come up until now, and only now does she realize, oh my, this is. It's not there. It's maybe the whole time she was convinced herself that it was, and so it maybe hurts just a little bit more. I'm almost depressed even bringing this up now, but I think that's why it's powerful and a big example of why this movie works. You feel these characters. You're not just watching them. You're feeling these. You're feeling that pain. You're feeling that frustration. You're feeling the love and the passion and everything.
Yeah. I agree with that. Ends up, again, happy ever after, but there's some heart. There's some, we kind of talked about the dark. That's probably the darker elements of just how she's treated. They go into that a little bit more. I only recall the Disney is like, they don't let her go to the ball. They rip her dress. And then that's when the fairy godmother or whatever makes her the dress and the takes her to the ball. And I do kind of like that twist. There's no fairy godmother, but Da Vinci is kind of in that place. He's the one that gets her the dress. And that, did you guys catch up on that?
I found it in a fun fact. Yeah, I wasn't going to bring
Okay.
it out though, so I'm glad you said it. But if I could jump in, he kind of took the place of that character, but his character was like used in a different way, and I think that he really shined because of the way they chose to go with that character.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't just like, let's do this differently. It's like, let's do this differently, but let's like make it mean something.
Right.
And it really played off very well.
Yeah, it did. I mean, did you catch that, Scott? I kind of was, as I'm watching, like, that's kind of like she got her wings, so he's given that to her in a way.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they'd gone and thrown the whole magic thing into the movie, I think it would have made it a little more corny. It wouldn't have worked in the in the vibe that they were putting out there. But I think Da Vinci, you consider what you just mentioned, but also, his interaction with Henry after he learns the truth about her station in life at the ball. Da Vinci is that, like, he's that balance. He's that, like, balance to the force, I guess you could say.
Yep.
He's that equalizer, though, that sort of ties all of this complicated group of characters together. He sees everybody for who they are, better or for worse, and he's not afraid to help, and he's not afraid to call them on it. And so in a way, that's, I guess, a form of magic, because he's he's a catalyst to that happily ever after.
Yeah, because it ends up being good. And we talked about the dark elements with the stepmother and the stepdaughter that kind of took her side there. They end up being workers for the king and queen after all. So I was kind of satisfied seeing that too, as much as,
Did you catch the royalty thing? They were turned purple.
Yes.
It's like that was like a symbolism of them. That's as close as they're going to get to royalty, basically, which I thought was really clever.
Yeah. I didn't think about it that way. Now you bring it up. That's really neat.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, because they get drenched in the purple. The one knocks them in. So it's kind of satisfying. I mean, I hate to say it, like, you don't want to see people suffer, but it's like, man, they kind of we've seen what they put poor Danielle through. So it was kind of a satisfying end. It was a true happily ever after when it came in. Everything was said and done. But I mean, there's some good quotes. I was thinking this is a really well written movie too. It's got some like I was bringing out. It has that heart of its drama, but then they also end on those quotes. But just throw it out to you guys. Any quotes that you can think of? And Scott, you mentioned a few of them, but any other ones you want to throw in there?
Well, the one, and I might fumble it just slightly, but the one she says just before is, she could, I guess, terminate the existence of the, her stepmother and the hard to take stepdaughter, but she doesn't. But she's like, I just want them to be treated as the same dignity and respect that they showed me. And it's like, oh man, you just feel that. Drew's delivery of it is a big part of why. But again, I think everybody might have encountered people in life that they might say that about. Yeah. So you felt that one. Felt that one. And it's like one of those where it's like, nobody, we're watching this at home, nowadays, like, this line's coming up, everyone be quiet. No one's talking over this particular part because you're going to have to do that. It's like the payoff to the whole thing right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a delivery too. I again go back to Drew she has her charm, but she gives it almost like, no, she spoke up because they said, if anyone wants to speak up, she chimes into the mother's thinking, oh, you're going to save me. And she just kind of has this pause. And then she goes into that line that you said. And it was just great. It was satisfying.
Well, and you got to keep in mind where Drew's real life adventures were at this particular stage as well. She had gone through an awful lot in a very short time for someone who was still very, very young. Some of it inflicted upon her, much as Danielle had. Some of it her own choices, of course, which she's never excused to this day. It's kind of a combination of things. But she was not one of those, child actor tragedies that we became used to hearing and reading about in the 80s. It was a rough time, but she was strong and she fought and she came out of it. And so I think a lot of that experience and that real life emotion, I think she channeled it into Danielle. And I think that's why some of these lines were delivered with such feeling and emotion, because they were coming from a very real place.
Yeah. Yeah. And you felt that. Again, that's why I just appreciate Drew. She's able to bring that out. You can really feel it's genuine. It doesn't feel forced. At least that's how I take it. And I think a lot of her fans too. But what about you, Seth?
I got a couple of quotes. Scott took one of them, but that's great. I'm glad he did. I really enjoyed the line where she says, "A bird may love a fish, senor, but where will they live?" And that's very thought provoking.
Yes,
because you think about what it signifies and what it really does mean, and it's like, wow, that really hits you.
Yeah.
As well as the scene you're talking about, that before she says what she says, that she says, I want you to know that I will forget you after this moment and never think of you again. But you, I'm quite certain, will think about me every day of the rest of your life. And that, I think a million actresses could have tried to deliver that line and not done as well as she did.
Well written, just well written.
Perfect words, and they were delivered so perfectly.
Yes. I think those were great quotes. I was like, again, I enjoyed the humor. Like there's those little things I just respect when they're able to balance. It doesn't feel forced, kind of like they're nudging you with an elbow. It was just kind of in passing. It's like you can almost miss it if you're not paying attention. But he's going to show the one, I forget the one character, but it was the childhood friend of Danielle. He's an artist. And he's like, I get to finally show you my art. And so he's like, can we do it now? And he's like, oh, now? And Vinci responds, he's like, when you're as old as me, my friend, now is all you got. So again, it's just so subtle. It goes along with the scene and his character, but I just got a chuckle out of it. It's like, it's well written and overall. But yeah, open up to you guys. Anything else that just to touch on that we might have forgot about?
Well, the thing that always stood out for me about Ever After, I guess, ever since, is, like I said, I mentioned at the start of this, how this was such a departure from what Drew was doing around that same time period, shortly before and shortly after, of course. But that it's also stands out as the only time she's ever really taken on something quite like this. And I find that interesting because she did such an amazing job with it. I'm sure it was hard. I'm sure it was tough. She's doing that accent when she's really got the Valley Girl voice, and all that sort of thing. I'm sure there's outtakes where that slipped out more than once. You can hear it sometimes a little bit in the movie, to be honest with you. Well, but that's maybe my ears, listening for it a little bit too. But yeah, I just this was like this one-time thing that she did, and she knocked it out of the park. Maybe that's why she didn't go back and do more period piece type things on this sort of level. Because, you got it right the first time. That's it, move on to the next thing. But maybe she found it exhausting. I don't know. But to me, that always kind of stands out, because it's like, here's this, you talk about Drew movies, you got a lot of rom-coms, and you've got some, interesting indie things. You got the action films, Charlie's Angels movies and that sort of thing. You got the stuff she did when she was younger. And then you got this one fairy tale movie that everybody loves. I've never heard anybody say they despise this movie or anything. I've never heard one person say that. This is a movie that people always bring up to me when they get me talking about Drew. This is the one they always bring up. But it was this one-time thing. And I always think that that's a very interesting thing to think about, given that she's still super active to this day and never done, not as an actor these days, of course, but she's done so many other things and never revisited anything like this.
It is interesting. Yeah. And it might be a fun fact. I don't want to step on your toes, Seth, but I do remember seeing this was her favorite movie that she's worked on. So that is kind of surprising. It's a good point. Like, this is the different It's a romantic movie, but kind of a comedy. Like I said, it's more on the drama side, but nothing like this. So that is interesting. But yeah, anything else, Seth, that you wanted to bring out?
I'll bring up 2 quick scenes. I won't go into detail about them. I'll just bring them up. But I really enjoyed the scene where they kind of get jumped by that crew of people, and she's willing to fight back, and she's willing to do what she has to do. And then her dialogue in that scene, that whole scene is just so impressive. It's funny because her behavior causes a reaction from the whole crew. Like, you can tell they're all enjoying what she's doing.
Yeah.
And they even, like, if you pay attention, they're even partying with those people afterwards.
Yes.
So it's pretty funny. But the other scene, we've already touched on it, but I just want to bring this out again. I like the scene where the Baroness is going to receive her judgment, and Danielle speaks on her behalf, like you said, it speaks for her, but also speaks the truth. She could have said anything she wanted to say, but what she chose to say was what you brought out, and it was really well played and delivered just so timely, and it was the payoff of the film, and it was just so well done. And I can't heap praise upon it enough, because that scene it had so much buildup, and yet it was the perfect little ending to it, and it was just well shot.
Yeah, I agree. It's just again a well-rounded movie, and I go back to what Scott was bringing out. It's just interesting how this is in Drew Barrymore's catalog of movies she's done, and it's just unique. I don't know what else to say about it. It's just a well-balanced movie. I respect movies that can do that, because I like a little comedy. Sometimes I'll watch movies and it's overdone, and then I get a little tired. I'm like, okay, ease it up a little bit. I never felt that way with this movie. It was just very clever, good writing, good characters. Got on the list. It's just a solid one, and yet we don't hear much about this one. I don't think, maybe if you're a Drew Barrymore fan, but otherwise it's not maybe among her other movies that she gets mentioned. So overall, yeah, I think we've had a good time with it. But I know, Seth, again, you've got some fun facts. So let's hear. I'm really interested to hear what you got.
I was going to skip over it since you mentioned it, but I'll go ahead and reiterate. So Drew has stated on a number of times, and I'm sure Scott knows this, that this is her favorite film that she's been a part of. Yeah. And I came across that a lot in research. And so that's saying something, because you think of all the blockbusters, you think of all the great roles that she's done. This was her favorite experience. And that's saying something. I mean, really, it's saying something.
Yeah.
The next one I've got was Da Vinci kept the Mona Lisa on him up until his death. So what they played a part in that movie, where the one thing that he had done, the piece of artwork got stolen and everything, he had it on his person. And so in real life, Da Vinci kept the Mona Lisa on his person until he died. So they used that in the movie. I thought that was really cool.
History piece. They kept the history there.
That was really, really neat.
That's cool.
Another thing I found was that one of the few adaptions where, and we talked about this, where the empathy of the stepsister, opposed to her family's feeling about her, you can actually see the moments in the film where she's like feeling for her and like wants her to win. And it's like, that's different. It's pretty cool that they did that.
Yeah. Well, and on to add to that, this is why I call Melanie Litsky criminally underrated, because she was telling that and showing that with just facial expressions.
Yes.
She wasn't saying it out loud, at least at first, a thing here or there she adds in, but early on it's a pure facial expression.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do. Obviously, the director, the way that, the camera shots made sure to capture all of that, but it became clear from her facial expressions that that's how she was feeling, or maybe processing. Maybe she was just kind of processing it from a fresh point as she grew older in life and what have you, right? But nonetheless, it wasn't, you did that without having to over explain it to the audience, and that was the beautiful thing of it. And that's right down just to the actors playing her.
I agree. Yeah.
That was perfectly said. I couldn't have said it better. I wanted to go elaborate, but I'm so glad that you did. Another thing I found was that Jude Law and Johnny Lee Miller turned down the role of Prince Henry. which is interesting. If anybody knows, like the guy that played,
I think I mispronounced his name. Is it
Doug Ray Scott? It's who I'm talking about.
Is it pronounced Dugray or Doug Ray? I think I'm butchered that.
I think it's DeGray.
Okay.
Anyway, he went on. He was supposed to play Wolverine in the Marvel series.
Oh, okay.
And his timing actually slipped where he couldn't do the role. Like he was all set to play Wolverine, and they actually had to get Hugh Jackman at the last minute, which I think is funny because. Oh. Yes.
Okay, it's coming together.
It's funny that Jude Law and Johnny Lee Miller were these huge names. I mean, huge names in acting around that time. And they turned it down, and he was like the male lead. It worked out. I mean, it just worked out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure because I think they leaned toward him because he had some Shakespearean actor history, but anyway, it's really funny that worked out that way, and then he has this as a staple instead of Wolverine. So
great.
I'm sure financially there's quite a bit of a gap between the two, landing the two roles, but he still landed an iconic spot and did an iconic job anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. It's time for a fun fact trivia. Wait, I have one more. I apologize. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm too excited. So for the theatrical release, they issued a PG-13 rating, perhaps to get a wider audience for a more serious telling of the story. However, when it was released on VHS, they gave it a PG rating, and we can't figure out why else they would have issued a PG-13 when it really doesn't warrant one. And we did extensive research on the subject, and it just doesn't make any sense. Like all they wanted to do is to actually sell more tickets and get a wider audience, and that's the reason why they rated PG-13. Because if you compare the dialogue or the content that's in the film, it's PG. I mean, there's no real legit reason for them to do that. So it's interesting that they did.
Yeah,
I've seen other movies do it, but it's very rare.
Well, even back then, there was a lot of chit chat though about how subjective it was, because PG-13 only got added in the first place because parents, certain types of parents out there, we didn't use buzzwords for people like that back in the day, but who complained that I took my kid to see this PG movie, parental guidance, and there were 3 more swear words than I would have been okay with, and you need to come up with something else. But the industry didn't want to come up with something else that was too far away from that, right? Because it maybe wouldn't qualify for R just because they had 1 more bad word. So they came up with this sort of, we'll just call it PG-13, because obviously, a 13-year-old can hear more swears than a 12-year-old, and it's okay. But it was sort of subjective at the time as to where that line is and what have you. It's sort of, and so that might have something to do with it, or they might have just, like you're saying, they were wanting to sell more tickets in the theater, but when it came out for home, they were worrying about sales and rentals, and kind of was like, could you maybe scale that back just a little bit, just to kind of help us with that, but there was a lot of industry talk at that point in time about that rating. And it's funny now because I don't think anybody even looks at ratings anymore, to be honest with you, except for you guys.
Tell you the truth, that's rare.
When you're doing these, you don't even hear anybody talk about movie ratings and stuff anymore. So I think that's an interesting thing anyway.
Yeah. That's what was kind of boggling, is like we were doing the research because, like we brought out, this is the first PG-13 movie, and the research said that, streaming might not include what got it the PG-13 rating. Supposedly, there's a few scenes where they say a strong word, and I actually have the DVD version of it. My wife is a big fan of this movie, so we watched it together, and we put the subtitles on because in those scenes, it's more of a background character. And like you're talking about with ratings, that 1 extra word that warrants the rating. And I must not have good hearing. I mean, maybe you have to have bionic hearing. I turned it up. I looked at the subtitles, and all the subtitle says was gibberish. It didn't even say the word. It just said, it's someone yelling or something like that. And we listened hard. So I don't know. I think it's more of maybe, like you're saying, it's just not a kid's flick. It's not the Disney version. They wanted that right balance. They didn't want it to be, this is only for kids, but they also didn't want to scare off people. Like, this is a strong, like really dark, like you'd see today, like we talked about. So I don't know. It's just interesting though. The VHS was PG. So,
well, I can think of two people out there that if they're watching this and they know the answer, they're going to inbox me in about 10 minutes. So it's a nice little follow up. If they know this, if they don't know, then no one knows. Except maybe those who were part of the movie itself. But I just, hi y'all, by the way. So yeah, I mean, we might get a postscript follow up on this one, but personally, I don't know the answer to this one either. It could have even been something that was cut out last minute to save a couple minutes here or there, but they didn't resubmit it to the MPAA because they needed to get to the release date, so there wasn't time. Maybe could be something as simple as that, and we're overthinking it.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to find out. So thank you for your insider. I'm going to be really curious.
So it is time for a fun fact trivia question. Are you guys ready? It's a true or false.
I'm ready. If Scott is ready.
Well, I wish it was a different Drew movie. Not saying I'm going to do bad, but just to preface this, and I could think of about 20 other Drew movies I'd be a little more confident about. This one, I may flub this one up, so apologies in advance to the people I just alluded to and anyone else out there. I feel like the expectations are high on me here.
It's just true or false, so it's no big deal.
No pressure.
So I believe it's Doug Ray Scott, is how you pronounce his name. Is it true or false? Did he almost pass out while filming a scene in this movie?
I would say true. I mean, they're out in the elements, outside a lot. This wasn't on a sound stage and what have you for at least most, if not all of the film. So it involved the weather and the lights and the long filming days. I could see that.
I'm probably going to, again, I'm not just saying because Scott, but I'm thinking that because I actually saw an interview where it was on the Drew Barrymore show. They had like kind of a reunion and she had him on and he said that he was in a lot of pain because he was riding horses all day long because of the timepiece he said, my muscles were just cramping all the time. It takes a lot of core strength and you wouldn't think about it if you've never been on a horse. So I'm going to have to say true because from that interview, it's telling me he might have almost passed out.
After I give the answer, you're going to be like, well, yeah, of course. All right. So it's true. Yes, you're both right. But it was when he was wearing the elaborate costume and filming the fencing scene and almost passed out due to the heat.
Okay.
Apparently it was quite hot that day and he was wearing that big getup and he just about passed out and they were really worried for him. They had to rush in and check him out. And anyway, I found it was hard to find trivia that wouldn't be well known on this one. So I had to dig. So I apologize if it's too simple.
No, I was thinking maybe you're throwing a curveball there, but I thought it was maybe a horse scene, like he's on a horse. And that would have been bad if he passed out while on a horse.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh yeah.
I mean,
holding a big nay.
Yeah. So it could have been a lot worse, but all right. So me and Scott are good to go on the trivia. That's awesome. But thank you for providing the trivia question. But what we like to do is look around the net, just kind of get an idea of a few thoughts of reviews. So Seth, what kind of reviews are you seeing?
All right. The first review I found was Leading Ladybug said, beautiful love story, 10 out of 10.
Wow. 10 out of 10. What did you think of that, Scott? Said a beautiful movie. Is that how you describe it?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, there's movies that you can watch and you can enjoy the characters, you can respect the characters, the dialogue. This is one of those where you can feel the characters. And whenever you can tap into genuine emotion like that, yeah, and especially when eventually you get the highs and the lows and you get the near misses and all of this, and you end up with a true happy ending that doesn't feel forced or cliche. Yeah, I would say beautiful. Absolutely.
All right.
The next one is The Little Songbird says, delightful retelling of a classic fairy tale, 10 out of 10.
Oh, familiar face. We've had Little Songbird on there, so they loved it as well. All right.
Mhm. And then the final one was David Kennedy 91087 says, smart and moving Cinderella retelling, 9 out of 10.
Okay. So pretty strong reviews, it sounds like overall. I think if you've seen it, you understand it, but we kind of talked about it. It's not really well known. At least that's what I've always got the impression of. But that's a little glimpse of what's out there. Now, we normally do a kid test. I'm going to admit I did not watch this with my kids. I want to make a disclaimer, though. The reason I didn't is they're not into these kind of movies. They don't like the romance, I joke around with them like, what, you don't like the kissy and stuff? And so I wanted it to be more fair because I figured they were going to say I didn't like it. I think, like we've talked about though, it's PG-13, but it's a mild and it somehow can be enjoyed by the kids, just not my kids. They're just in that stage. Maybe when they get a little older, they'll appreciate it. But I would say it's probably okay for kids. There's some language. There's a brief scene of violence. It's not anything more than you're going to be seeing in a PG-13, I would say. I've seen actually worse in some PG movies. So nothing to be too concerned about, but I think some kids will enjoy this one. I'll just put that one more on the briefer side.
I think it passes the kid test because, yes, there are some bad people in this movie. Including the dude at the end who desperately needs a toothbrush, for example. But the thing with it is that the bad characters, the evil characters, they get their comeuppance.
Yes.
And so even if the child, especially a younger child, feels even momentarily stressed or distressed by these characters, they get that comeuppance, and they get their comeuppance in a balanced way. I don't know exactly what Danielle did at the end to get her freedom fully. They didn't show it on screen. Did she just, did she just walk out, or did she, have, another moment in there, the dude, we didn't see him again. So, and then again, the comeuppance, at the end where, the evil stepmother and the evil stepsister, they live, but they definitely, now it's their turn to feel like they feel. So, I don't think if there is a young child that watches it, a parent shows it to a young child, I think that's important to differentiate, because you don't see that in, I guess, enough modern day films where, perhaps the villain or the antagonist kind of gets away with it, or doesn't really get their full comeuppance, or, what have you. They just kind of go on and they escape, or they move on, or they live on for potential sequels and merchandising opportunities. And in this case, they all got their comeuppance. Everybody who was virtuous got their moment. Everybody who wasn't, they got theirs. I think that's definitely something that kids need to see, because, we ideally would see that in the real world too, but is. It's nice to live in a fairy tale sometimes like that. So.
Yeah, realistic, but right. It's not emphasizing that's what we should really conduct ourselves. We shouldn't be like the stepmother or those other characters you mentioned there as well. Okay, we've come to the time where we get to put our official stamp and rating. So Scott, again, you are our guest, our visitor. So I'm going to start with you, asking the question, how are you going to rate Ever After A Cinderella Story? Are you going to take it home? Are you going to watch it at grandma's? Or are you going to hide it in the attic?
Well, I'll take it home and watch it anywhere. I think this one's always worth a watch. It's interesting that, by the way, to hear you note, that it's one that you don't think people talk about enough. But again, I talk to a lot of droobies, if you will. That seems to be the tag, so I'll wear it proudly. It ended up in my lower, the cryon when I was on Collector's Call. So I guess it's official. I need to embrace it fully. But yeah, I mean, it definitely is one whenever somebody is like, oh, hey, you're in the Drew, or, oh, hey, they always bring this up. This is one of the ones that they always bring up to me. So I guess it just kind of depends on what circles you run in. But yeah, definitely, take it home, watch it at grandma's house, watch it on a plane, watch it on a train, whatever you want to do.
with a fox in a box, all that good stuff. That sounds like a good time to me. All right. So there we got our first rating. So let's come to you, Seth. How are you going to rate it?
So, I was so glad to revisit this one. I loved it growing up, as I mentioned. To tell the truth, I really do think it holds up. I have to take this one home. And as I did rewatch it gratefully 3 times in preparation for this. So, it's a ticket home for me. And I think this one really speaks for itself.
Very nice. I really had a good time with this. I didn't think I was going to hate it, but I was actually enjoying it. Like I brought out, it had a nice balance of the humor that I like just kind of sprinkled in there, but it was dramatic. And when it first started out, I think it felt more, I don't know how to put it, but more like a play. And as I watched it more, I started to like it more and more. It's got this unique style to it of the acting. It's not so serious that you can't enjoy those comedic parts. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. So I had a really good time with this one. And when it comes to our ratings, it's not bad. I'm going to watch this at grandma's, but I actually am going to put it kind of up on the higher mark because I feel like I could come back to this every once in a while, have a great time with it. Now I sit here and I do own it. So, I mean, technically I took it home, but this is my wife's. So by default, but it's still a respectable rating. That's how I look at it, of like coming back to every once in a while, and maybe you'll find something new compared to watching it all the time. You can kind of be like, oh yeah, I forgot about that scene. So I can't recommend this movie enough. I had a really good time with it. And like you were saying, Scott, I think this is one that if you're a Drew Barrymore fan, like, what are you doing? Why are you not watching this? This is showcasing her acting skills, her charm, her humor. I mean, I'm laughing at stuff she was doing, just not taking anything from these guys. Just, she's got her own independence. And then she can turn on the drama. I mean, she had some great scenes in this movie where you felt it. You were like, yeah, get at it. So,
and a lot of the quirks of Danielle were Drew's very real and authentic little quirks that make her so charming in the first place. So, it's just, and that's part of why it works as well. I don't know who else would have done as good of a job at that time in that role in this style as she did. I know I'm obviously biased with that, but I really honestly can't think of it having worked any other way. It's some alternative universe out there where you pick up your wife's DVD and it's like, I don't even know that I want to watch it. I can't imagine it working any other way.
Right. Yeah. That's a me thing, because I wouldn't say I'm going to reach for a romantic style movie, but if I'm going to pick one, this is one of the first ones, I will say. It has that great balance of just what you want in a romance. Again, it feels earned. It's not forced. This is some farm boy from long ago. Oh, I forgot about him. Like those Hallmark movies. This was very much earned. You could get into it. So I can't recommend it enough. And like you're saying, a lot of that is Drew Barrymore. She is Danielle. I'm trying to think of another actress. I mean, I'm not being biased here. Like, she plays that part so well. I can't think of anyone else playing the part. So 100% agree with you on that. All right. Well, there we go. We got another movie in the books with the help of Scott. So thank you so much for joining. This was an absolute blast, but we want to make sure that everyone can find you, connect with you. So you have the platform.
All right. Well, my podcast is the Patrick Scott Patterson Project. It is a podcast about chasing goals and putting yourself out there and following the paths that open up along the way. The entire purpose of it is to inspire people to get up and go do the thing. Well, everybody, that sounds non-specific, but everybody knows to them what the thing is, that they want to do, feel compelled to go do, but maybe they haven't yet, because society kind of teaches you to hesitate or overthink it or what have you. And fitting enough is that me launching that podcast was inspired by me finally getting to meet Drew in person and experience the person that she is, albeit, rather briefly. It wasn't a 1-second interaction and it wasn't a long conversation, but she is as advertised. In fact, she's possibly even nicer than I thought she would be. And that's, if you stop and let that remark land, maybe you need to let that remark land. She's just pure sunshine. And me finally getting to meet her in person got other people to tell me that they were going and they were doing things for themselves because they knew how much that meant to me. So now they were inspired to go do things for them. And that's like, well, okay, here's the idea for the podcast I've always wanted to do. So let's go. And I just jumped straight in, and here we are a year later. So yeah, you can look for that on all major podcast platforms. Again, it's the Patrick Scott Patterson Project. And you can find me on the social media, mostly on Facebook. I post a little on Instagram. Everything else I'm kind of either bored with or annoyed with, so I don't really, they're there, but I don't use them all that much. So you can follow me on these other platforms if you want. Just don't expect much other than me plugging the podcast.
Love
if
your
you want
honesty.
conversation, follow me on the other ones.
Yes, like Seth said, love your honesty. But yeah, check out the podcast. Absolutely great message, like you're saying there. Really love that. And
I appreciate you coming by to talk with me
Yeah.
about your journey as well. I think it's a wonderful journey. No spoilers. They're going to have to go to my podcast to learn your story and what led you here.
That's right. You'll get to hear me on there. You got some great guests on there too, I'll say. Some great stories. That's what I love to hear. Yeah, everybody has a story. Everybody has something they want to have, and it's interesting. You don't know a person until they let you tell their story. And that's what your platform does on your podcast. So definitely go check it out if you have not already. Definitely give you some highlight there. And Seth, we got to make sure we tell people where they can find and connect to us.
You can find us on YouTube, Threads, and Facebook, as well as Instagram at Movies at Grandma's House and on TikTok at LADX Media. Feel free to email us your movie suggestions, memories, and comments to moviesatgrandmashouse@gmail.com. We have a very excellent newsletter, so check that out, as well as a Patreon, and with exclusive content for our loyal fans. And as always, we are brought to you by MoviePosters.com, so please use code Grandma's House, that's all one word, at checkout for up to 15% off.
There you go. All good stuff. Yeah, we'd love to hear, again, your story, your memories of movies we covered, any recommendations. Drop us a line sometime. We'd love to hear it. And our newsletter, again, we stress that because you get a free entry for a free movie poster. We do it once a month. It is so much fun. So make sure if you have not, get on the newsletter. It's free. It's so much fun. All right. That is all for now, but thank you again so much. Just want to thank you for coming on, Scott, with your busy schedule. You're welcome back anytime. We'd love to hear some more memories that you have as well. So thank you again so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I hope everybody has a great time listening to this episode.
Absolutely. This was so much fun. So that's going to do it for our time at Grandma's house, but don't worry, we will be back soon. So in the meantime, remember to be kind and rewind. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye, everybody.